The first known civilization in South Asia appeared around 2500 BC on the Indian subcontinent. Like the earlier civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt, this one began in a river valley. In the area drained by the Indus River, hundreds of small farming villages arose. When they grew surplus food, they increased their populations and eventually formed the Indus Valley Civilization. This civilization included about 1,400 cities and towns. Many were laid out in grid patterns similar to those in modern cities. They show evidence of city planning that far surpassed anything in ancient Egypt and Sumer. After about 1,000 years, this great civilization declined, though no one knows why. About that same time, a collection of nomadic herders called Aryans arrived in the Indus Valley. In addition to being herders, the Aryans were fierce warriors. By 700 BC, many Aryan kingdoms had formed across northern India. The Aryans had a collection of religious poems called Vedas, and the time the Aryans flourished in India is called the Vedic Age. Aryan society was built on castes, a system in which every person is born into a fixed social class. Over the centuries, the caste system became more complex. Eventually, hundreds of castes existed. Brahmanism was the main religion during the Vedic Age. According to tradition, only priests from the highest caste, the Brahmins, could perform rituals and sacrifices to the Vedic nature gods. So priests became extremely powerful. But by 800 BC, the ways of worship in India began to change. Gurus, or religious thinkers, began to challenge Brahmanism. The nature gods became less important, and people grew more concerned with questions raised by the gurus about how to lead a moral life. A new religion was born, Hinduism. Hinduism combined Aryan beliefs with local Indian religions. Although they still worshipped many gods, now Hindus also believed in one supreme god, Brahman. Many different forms of Hinduism evolved, but all Hindus shared the same basic beliefs, including reincarnation, the idea that after death the soul is reborn in another body, and the law of karma, in which actions in this life can affect a person's destiny in the next. The existing faiths in India became a part of Hinduism, which absorbed local gods and traditions. And because they placed little emphasis on complex rituals, Hindus could set up shrines anywhere, even in their own homes. Hinduism also encouraged creativity. Temples became centers of music, dance, and art, as well as prayer and worship. When Indian merchants traveled to distant lands in Southeast Asia, they took their religion with them. That's why the walls of many temples in other parts of Asia, like those in Angkor in Cambodia, are decorated with images of the Hindu gods. But Hinduism wasn't the only world religion to start in India. Buddhism began here too. It's based on the teachings of the spiritual leader Siddhartha Gautama. Siddhartha was an Indian prince born to a life of privilege around 563 BC, but he gave up his wealth and began a quest for spiritual enlightenment. After years of searching, self-denial, and meditation, it's said that Siddhartha achieved his goal. From then on, he was known as the Buddha, which means the Enlightened One. For the next 45 years, the Buddha traveled through India and brought his teachings to many people. The Buddha accepted many Hindu ideas, including reincarnation and karma. But he dismissed many others, particularly the caste system. The Buddha taught that anyone could achieve enlightenment by following a series of principles he called the Eightfold Path. Buddhism grew very popular, and its followers spread it quickly through India. Some Indian rulers encouraged it. One of these rulers was Ashoka, a great military leader who ruled the powerful Mauryan Empire between 273 and 232 BC. After defeating the rival kingdom of Kalinga, Ashoka was shocked at the death and suffering his troops had caused. So he turned away from violence and embraced Buddhism. He built many monasteries and monuments, and sent missionaries to spread Buddha's teachings to the rest of the world. Ashoka's empire collapsed within 50 years of his death, breaking into many smaller kingdoms. But Buddhism survived and was eventually carried to other lands, and has become one of the modern world's most popular religions.
All right, that was an intro video. So we're going to start with the Aryan invasion. So the Indus River Valley civilization collapses. Remember, back in our first unit, we covered different river valley civilizations. Well, the Indus River Valley civilization begins to collapse. The Aryans come in and they conquer the people that were living here in this region, known as the Dravidian people. Around 1500 BC, the Aryans came across the Himalayas through a mountain pass from Asia. The Aryan people did not settle in one place. They would go from place to place. They were nomads. They herded cattle and they fought. Now, whenever they settle here in India, they start to develop iron weapons, horse-drawn chariots, and having those items enabled them to conquer their neighbors. And so here we see the Aryans come in. They start to take control of this whole region. By 900 BC, they form city-states. And so you start seeing the Aryans come to power here in this region. They begin to develop a different government system where they have people now leading, controlling different city-states all in this area in the major river valleys. The Aryans developed their own form of writing known as Sanskrit. And they also brought a new religion to India known as Hinduism. Like you saw in the video, Hinduism was practiced in India. And so there's four major beliefs of Hinduism that I want you to know. The first one is gods. Hindus believe that there are many gods and goddesses. We call the worship of more than one god polytheism. Hopefully you remember that. Each of these gods, however, is a manifestation or a form of one supreme being. You have reincarnation, and Buddhism and Hinduism both believe in reincarnation. Hindus believe that at death, a person's soul is reborn as another living thing, and this just creates an endless cycle of rebirth. You also have karma. Karma refers to a person's behavior in life. Hindus believe that a person's form in the next life, if they were a good person, meaning they lived a good life, they cared about other people, they strove to do the right thing, then that person would be reborn into a higher caste. If the person was selfish, did not care about others, may have lived an evil life, then that person was reborn into a lower caste. Then at the bottom right, you have sacred objects. Hindus believe that the Ganges River is sacred and has the power to wash away sin and evil. And also the cow is considered sacred, and religious Hindus do not eat beef. Hinduism provided its believers with an entire new way of life. It guided them from birth to death. Hinduism also had no single holy book. Like when we studied Christianity earlier in the unit, Christianity, their holy book is the Bible. Well, Hindus here, they have no single holy book. They have various writings that provide guidance for them. You have the writings here. Now, a part of Hinduism is the caste system. So the main caste divisions in India are here. You have the priests, warriors, landowners, peasants. And at the bottom, you have the untouchables. Now you have that line above the untouchables. It's because the untouchables don't even belong in the caste system. They're out of the caste system. So if I was to draw this, and I didn't draw this picture here, but if I was to actually redraw it, I would actually put the untouchables outside of this triangle, not even put a line above them, but actually put them outside of the triangle because they are considered outside of the caste system. So the Aryan and Dravidian people, they begin to mix, and with this mixing, the Aryans decide to start putting into pretty much put into new rules into society. These rules allowed only Aryans to occupy the higher social classes. So the Aryans were at the top of the caste system. There were priests, warriors, and landowners. And under this system, people were divided into different hereditary classes known as castes, which you saw in this triangle here. Now, you were placed in that caste at birth, and it was a rigid system. You couldn't move from one caste from one caste line to another. Where you were born is where you stayed. People lacked mobility. They couldn't move and change social classes. You weren't even allowed to marry somebody outside of your caste. Untouchables, like I mentioned, they were at the bottom of that triangle. They performed the lowest tasks. They handled dead bodies, they swept streets. Those were considered low tasks. And they were completely outside of the social order. Now, we also have Buddhism that comes from India. The religion of Buddhism began in India around 500 BC. Siddhartha Gautama lived his life, a life of comfort and luxury. He was a wealthy prince in Nepal. And one day he's looking outside of his palace walls and he notices people suffering. He notices people unable to eat, people hurting, and it shocks him. And he starts looking deep within himself and he sees that something wasn't right. So this prompted him to move and to leave. He left his wealth, he left his wife, he left his 2 children in search of the truth. He wanted to know what was the truth. And so it took him 6 years of searching until he finally realized that all suffering was caused by human selfish desires. That is what he believed. And to end suffering, a person must come to accept the world as it is and to block out his or her own selfish desires. Again, selfish desires is what we want to connect with Buddhism here. Gautama became known as the Buddha or the Enlightened One. And here are the major beliefs of Buddhism. You have their basic philosophy. Buddhism is based on the philosophy of self-denial and meditation. They also believe in reincarnation, just like the Hindus. They, again, here for gods and holy books, they do not believe in a single supreme being, okay, a single God. They also do not have a primary holy book. Their basic beliefs are found in different books called the Sutras. Now you have at the bottom here, the bottom left, you have the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. This is sort of the important teachings here of Gautama. So the Four Noble Truths, these truths explain life's meaning. They explain that pain and suffering is caused by human desire, such as the desire for material wealth and selfish pleasures. And only by giving up those desires can a person find peace and harmony. That takes us to the Eightfold Path. So to give up selfish human desires, you need to follow this path, according to Gautama. You need to have the right goals, the right perspective. You need to be aware. You need to act in a worthy manner, speak truthfully, live righteously, respect all living things, and you must meditate. And if you do all of those things, you can escape the endless reincarnations and you can achieve nirvana. Nirvana here, the definition is a state of eternal peace and bliss. So Buddhism, you can imagine people were attracted to it. It rejected the caste system that many felt restricted their lives. They couldn't move out of that system. They couldn't marry they couldn't marry somebody of a different caste. Some people had to stay and do tasks and jobs that were the lowest of the low. And so Buddhism spreads, it rejects the caste system, and it spread to different parts here of Asia and the East, right? You have, you see all the different places that it spreads, but it's spread by missionaries, Buddhist missionaries. Here you see a map showing you the spreading. You have the lines with the arrows, that is the spread of Buddhism. You have the darker shades, which shows you the Hindu influence. I have another video for you to watch talking about the Mauryan and Gupta empires. Check it out.
The Mauryan Empire was founded in 324 BCE and lasted until 184 BCE. It was one of the largest empires in its time. Before the Mauryan Empire, most of India was broken apart Then it became unified. This was the founder. His name is Chandragupta Maurya. He somehow gained power and started conquering surrounding kingdoms just randomly. He was able to hold the empire together by centralizing the government to control and crush resistance. During his reign, he accomplished a lot, like a strong economy and flourishment of agriculture, but nobody really cares about him. Who do they care about, you ask? They care about Ashoka. Ashoka was in reign from 269 BCE to 232 BCE and had a lot more accomplishments than Chandragupta. Well, at least known ones.
Let's jump right to it. So, Ashoka the Great, may I call you Ashoka? Of course. Alright. How were you affected by the Battle of Kalinga? The battle made me realize that violence was not the way to go. Therefore, I became Buddhist. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I encourage everyone else to live with peace and tolerance. What are your intentions for your people? My only intentions are that they live without fear of me, that they may trust me, and that I may give them happiness, not sorrow. Furthermore, they should understand that the king will forgive those who can be forgiven, and that he wishes to encourage them to practice Dharma so that they maintain happiness in this world and the next. Okay. So it is understood that there are pillars named after you. Am I correct? Yes. So what are these pillars supposed to mean or represent? Yes. They are called the pillars of Ashoka, which are carved with Buddhist teachings like Dharma. There is no gift like the gift of Dharma, acquaintance with Dharma, distribution of Dharma, and kinship through Dharma. Dharma is the way to go. That's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Ashoka the Great. Until next time, everyone. Cue the applause.
It was going very well for the Mauryan Empire until Ashoka died and everything went downhill. The Greeks attacked as they did before many times, unsuccessfully, but this time they were successful. The Mauryan Empire collapsed and then India became disunified politically for 5 centuries. It wasn't until 320 CE that another large empire came about, and they were known as the Gupta Empire. Since the Gupta Empire followed the Mauryan Empire, time-wise, they decided to imitate them. The first emperor even took Chandragupta's name. They did have some heroic and creativity though, I'll give them that. Most people think that the Middle East created the decimal system, but that is incorrect information. The Gupta Empire came up with the concept of 0 and pi as well as the decimal system, which we all in some way still use. Strong trade ties also made the region an important cultural center and set the region up as a base that would influence nearby kingdoms and regions in Burma, Sri Lanka, and Southeast Asia. The Gupta Empire declined because after the strong ruler, which was Skandagupta, stopped his reign, he was then followed by weak rulers, and we all know in which direction that went. On top of that, Hephthalites broke into their defenses and then their empire was really in a bad situation. Don't think that the Guptas did not go down without a fight, because they did. Apparently they resisted the Huns for a while, but then of course they eventually lost because it even took Mulan a lot of work to be prepared to do the same.
Hey guys, I'm Monk Faxian, and I will be taking calls at this moment, so whenever you're ready. Hey, my name is Jeff, and I was wondering what are your thoughts on the Gupta Empire since you visited when it existed? Oh, that is a good question, Jeff. I would have to say that the people are numerous and happy. The king governs without corporal punishment, meaning that criminals are simply fined, lightly or heavily, according to the circumstances of each case. I feel like you can sense where I'm going with this. Everything is done with ease, really, kind of a chill place.
Hard to follow? Let me sum it up for you. The Gupta Empire followed Hinduism, meanwhile the Mauryan Empire followed Buddhism. The Gupta Empire ended because of external people like the Huns, and for the Mauryan Empire, Ashoka was killed. And lastly, the Gupta Empire impacted people culturally, meanwhile the Mauryan Empire was very powerful.
All right, so just going over the Mauryan Empire real quick. Ashoka began his reign by fighting a series of wars to enlarge his empire. After 8 years of nearly constant warfare, and this includes warfare with over 900 trained elephants, he grew horrified by the bloodshed and violence. Thousands of people had been killed, especially under his watch. And so this prompted him to renounce violence, and he decided to convert to Buddhism. Asoka decided to win the people's loyalty by acts of kindness. He promoted their welfare and their happiness. He decreed that all religions should live peacefully with one another. He improved roads, built hospitals, sent teachers throughout the empire to encourage education. He promoted Buddhism by building Buddhist shrines throughout India. He sent missionaries to other lands. Yet, despite all his success, when he died, the Mauryan Empire fell apart. And that leads us to the Gupta Empire. The Gupta were a new ruling family. They united the territory around the Ganges River. Gupta emperors encouraged peace, prosperity, and trade with foreign lands, especially China. The 2 centuries of Gupta rule are sometimes referred to as the Golden Age of Hindu culture. And anytime we talk about any Golden Age, we're talking about peace, stability. We're also talking about education, art, science, literature, mathematics, and that's what we have here. Gupta emperors, they built universities, supported learning, the arts, literature. They supported artists painting colorful murals, while writers composed poems and plays written in Sanskrit. Indian scholars excelled at the sciences and mathematics. Arabic numerals used throughout the whole world today were first developed in India during this time. Gupta astronomers put forward the idea that the Earth was not flat, but round and rotated on its own axis. Gupta physicians, they set bones, performed minor skin grafts. You could see just by reading those things that this was a golden age of learning and education. And that brings us to the end of our session here. All right, so I encourage you to continue reading, taking notes, as we will be testing sometime next week. So please do your best. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much.